Welcome to the Aced It podcast, where we turn science into sense. This is the 14th season of Aced It, and we are so incredibly grateful that we are able to deliver rich scientific content to you in a usable and understandable way. Aced It is brought to you via the Justice Community Overdose Innovation Network, or JCOIN. If you're new to Aced It, welcome. We're so glad you're here. And check out the prior seasons to begin or continue your learning journey. A special thank you to every wonderful listener. We promise we will continue working to help you learn and grow via Aced It. Also, a quick plug for a few other JCOIN features. Did you know you can get technical assistance for your organization from the experts at JCOIN? And did you know you can apply for a small research grant to help fund an innovative study idea? Yep, through JCOIN. And did you know you can apply to be a JCOIN LEAP scholar or investigator, a year-long mentorship that will improve your skills? Also through, you got it, JCOIN. If any or all of these exciting offerings sound interesting, check out our website, jcoinctc.org, and learn about the many JCOIN courses, products, and opportunities beyond Aced It, all designed to translate science into sense for you. With that, I am honored that you're with us. I'm Danielle Rudes, your host, and this is Aced It. Welcome to episode 9 of season 14 of the Aced It podcast, about the stories we tell about drugs and overdose. This season, we're exploring the narratives told about drugs and overdose, who gets to tell them, and the narratives they choose to spread. Ultimately, these narratives shape stigma, guide policy responses, and affect access to treatment. Today, we're going to talk about academia and professional networks. Universities and research centers might seem far removed from everyday life and experiences, but they quietly influence how society talks about drugs and the people who use them. Through research and expert opinion, academics and professionals help shape ideas that eventually show that in the media, public debate, and importantly, policy decisions. But academia isn't just about the knowledge that is produced. It is also made up of real people, many of whom may have had their own experience with substance use or recovery that rarely gets talked about out loud. Let's start with where you can usually find academics, inside universities, all around the world. Research suggests that addiction and recovery among faculty members are far more common than most people might expect, but they're rarely discussed openly. For example, Burns and colleagues 2021 conducted a study examining addiction disclosures among university faculty in Canada. They found that formal disclosures were extremely rare. And when they did happen, they were usually about alcohol rather than other substances. But this silence doesn't mean substance use isn't present in academia. Instead, it was heavily influenced by the professional norms associated with universities. Within that environment, disclosing any type of quote-unquote weakness can feel risky, and many academics who may be navigating substance use or recovery end up managing that part of their lives privately, even while working in fields that study addiction or drug policy. That stigma shapes not only academics' personal lives, but also the science they produce. Some academics who study drugs acknowledged in a 2020 study by Ross and colleagues that personal experience with substance use exists within the community of drug researchers, but that it is rarely discussed openly in published work or even when communicating with other professionals. There are understandable reasons for that. Academics and professionals can experience similar effects as any other individual struggling with substance use or recovery. Publicly disclosing their substance use can come with work consequences, social stigma, or even legal risks. At the same time, it's really important to understand that many researchers argue that acknowledging lived experience could actually strengthen our research. Being transparent about personal experience can encourage what we researchers call reflexivity. This means researchers think critically about how their own experiences and background shape the questions we ask others, and what we conclude about those answers. In that sense, lived experience can help us deepen understanding rather than undermine it. We see this happen in other contexts as well. In our next episode, for example, we'll talk a little bit more about how people with lived experience using drugs use their experience to strengthen support among those who use substances or who are in recovery. We encourage you to stay and listen to that episode also. It can be really eye-opening to hear about how all of this can intersect. Now, let's talk a little bit more about how academics can also influence the stories we tell about drugs through the way research is conducted and understood. Qualitative research is an excellent way to do this. Qualitative studies focus on people's experiences and perspectives. Instead of looking at numbers, qualitative researchers talk to people and listen to a broad range of perspectives. And then they use those experiences to help others understand how people are feeling. In this case, researchers can ask people to explain how they began using drugs or why they might continue to use them. Traditionally, these stories have been treated as straightforward, but researchers such as Martin and colleagues 2024 have found that people often tell stories that are much more than straightforward narratives. They talk about the very familiar issues we've discussed on this podcast over many episodes, like peer pressure, stigma, or coping. Studying these stories helps us understand not just drug use itself, but also about how the broader society talks about and understands substance use. This is important to understand because once research is produced, it doesn't always stay inside universities. It travels. It travels into professional networks and policy spaces, but drug policymakers rarely sit down and read dense academic research. In a study by Ritter and colleagues, 2008, policymakers said they relied more on conversations with trusted experts, technical reports, and advice from colleagues in other jurisdictions when making decisions. Academic journal articles are among the least used resource for information, with only 28% reporting that they use them. Academic research is often complex and cautious. Policy discussions, on the other hand, require ideas that can be communicated quickly. So even though academic research helps shape the evidence base, its influence often depends on how clearly those ideas can travel beyond the university and into political spaces. Finally, professional networks, including those that exist among social media, are becoming spaces where these stories can continue to evolve. On platforms referred to as quote-unquote medical Twitter, quote-unquote public health Twitter, or similar communities, health professionals are talking publicly about opioids and overdose. Recent work done by Scott Graham and colleagues 2022 finds that while stigmatizing language is still present, there has been a clear rise in destigmatizing language in several of these communities over time. At the same time, other scholars, such as Lipset and colleagues 2023, call on researchers to check their own biases, partner with people who use drugs, use people-first, non-judgmental language, and explain the social condition that shapes substance use rather than framing it as an individual failing. When academic and professional communities shift the language they use and who they collaborate with, they aren't just changing research practices. They're helping shape new stories about drug use and overdose, which can help dismantle stigma. From the silence around substance use within universities, to the ways researchers interpret people's experiences, to how research travels into policy and professional conversations, each step helps shape how society understands substance use. As the field continues to grow, many researchers are calling for approaches that include lived experience and the voices of people affected by these issues. After all, these stories and perspectives of real people are what make this work possible. And when those voices are heard, the conversations we have about drugs and overdose can also begin to shift from stigma and misunderstanding toward empathy, understanding, and effective responses. Thank you for joining us. Come back for another episode of Aced It. Thank you so much for listening to the Aced It podcast. We love hearing from you, so if you have comments, topics to suggest, or some science you'd like us to cover in a future season, please write to me, Danielle Rudes at Sam Houston State University. My email is drudes@shsu.edu. And of course, thank you to the Justice Community Overdose Innovation Network, JCOIN's Coordination and Translation Center, funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, housed at George Mason University, where this podcast originated. Thank you to our fabulous scriptwriter team and also my fabulous doctoral students at Sam Houston State University, Bryce Kushmerek-McCune, Jalen Magana, and Alexa Mata. And a huge and a heartfelt thank you to the team at Slonky LLC for their wonderful podcast production as always. Tune in again soon for another episode of Aced It.